Okay, welcome everyone. Good to see you all. It's our last COP for this academic year, and we are excited to host one last but an amazing COP coming up your way. So let's get started in the interest of time. Let me introduce you to our amazing team who have put this together. We have worked in collaboration with each other and brought to you these sessions. This is Julianne Gensho, who is the computer science coordinator. And today we have Krista Noram here with me, who's also the EdTech coordinator at the ICE team in SCCOE. And Amanda Turkey, who you must have met in our last COP, the school library services coordinator. This is the team that has brought this to you. And I want to present to you and introduce you to our amazing speaker, Chris Mah. He is going to talk today about AI or not, one of the burning topics that we are all facing every day, if and when of using AI in education. And if you have heard him before, you know what you're up for and ready for a very informative and interactive session. If not, you will be amazed at what, amazing information that you'll be sharing, and you would be participating in some interactive activities too. So Chris Ma, he is a PhD candidate at the Stanford University Graduate School of Education. His work focuses on learning technologies, teacher education, and writing. He is a former high school English teacher who also has experience working in the tech industry. So without further ado, Chris, I'm going to have you take over and start your session in the interest of time. We are doing good right now. It's 4:02.
Great, thank you, Anu. Can I have access, share screen? I'll share my screen.
Yes.
Thank everybody for joining. It's great to see you all, and um, let's dive right in. Okay, so as Anu mentioned, my name is Chris Ma. I am actually in my final couple weeks here at Stanford, wrapping up my PhD. And today, we're going to be doing some activities together to really think about if, when, and how we might use AI in our classrooms. Yes, thank you for putting the link to the slides. Please do open the slides because we're going to be in the slides together in just a couple moments. So here are our goals for today. We're going to explore some AI ed tech tools together. We're going to learn a couple different frameworks for evaluating these tools. We'll actually use those frameworks to evaluate the tools, and then we'll apply our knowledge to our own classroom practice. So I think one of the things that kind of motivates me to think about this topic is oftentimes, in education and other fields, when we have these new tools, we feel obligated to use them. We feel pressured to use them. And sometimes we fall into this trap of, when you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And so today, my goal is really to help us all think more deliberately about if, when, and how we might choose to use AI in our practice. Okay, so as an opener, I want to do a little bit of just crowdsourcing. I want to get a sense of like what everybody's experience is with AI. So if you go to slide number 4, I think, or 3, go to slide 4. I'd like everyone to just take 2 or 3 minutes right now to just create like a little, like make a copy of like the yellow sticky note, and then just make a note here about any AI tool you've used, how you've used it, and then whether or not you found it useful and why. Okay. I see folks have already started, but please go ahead, take just 2 minutes. Let's just crowdsource some ideas. How have people been using AI? What have they found useful or not? And we want useful use cases as well as not useful ones. Both are helpful here. I know we've got some folks on the road, but if you're near your computer, please copy and paste a new note and just share with folks what you've used and why. It looks like most people are putting down useful applications. I'm really curious if or if there are folks out there who have used AI tools in ways that they have not found useful. If that's you, please make a sticky note for that too. Take maybe one more minute. Okay, finish up where you are. And great. It looks like people have been using lots of different tools for lots of different purposes. I'm sure you've had a chance to kind of skim some of these use cases. I'm actually just going to take some notes here on slide 6. Would love to hear from maybe 3 or 4 people what makes an AI tool useful or not in your perspective. So would love to just hear from 3 or 4 people. What are some criteria for whether or not an AI tool would be useful or not? Please, Mark.
Yeah, see if I can do this without dying on the road. Uh, I think the most useful AI tools I'm able to work with in areas in which I am also already not necessarily expert, but at least knowledgeable, so that it basically works as an assistant to me. Um, Even in areas such as creating artwork. I never consider myself to be an artist, although I have done an awful lot of graphic arts using conventional tools. Uh, they can help me do things where I know the right questions to ask already.
Awesome. Thank you.
So those would be the most useful.
So kind of areas where I already have some knowledge, some expertise, and it can complement that. Others.
Yes.
I can't see everybody on the screen. So if you have a comment, just go ahead and come off mute.
Um, Tools where you save on time.
Can you say a little bit more about
So
that?
like planning, like for me, putting a lesson together with AI, I can cut down on like looking for content to create questions or um just coming up with a new idea or revamping an existing assignment to create levels to it to scaffold it for different students.
Yeah, so time saving is definitely one where a lot of educators find value. I'm curious, are there any tasks in your day-to-day where time saving is not the most important thing? So in other words, are there any activities you do as a teacher where the time savings is not worth, whatever is lost in the process.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so
Because
saving time
I'm
is
trying to simplify tasks, something that I might feel like it's like mundane. I'm able to like trim down on time and then focus on bigger projects that
awesome.
require my attention and not something that AI could just generate.
Awesome. And I see other people are kind of writing in here as well. I'm going to highlight what the last person said around like mundane tasks. So automating away tasks we just don't like. So automating away, tasks that take a long time, that we don't like. Those are two of the most common use cases. Why don't we shift over to not useful? So what are some instances when these tools might not be useful? You can put it in chat, you can start typing on the screen, or you can come off mute. Let's hear maybe 2 or 3 of these.
For me, I admit I feel like it's maybe part of my struggle in terms of interacting with AI, but I do not find it useful as an inspiring thought partner. It gives me a lot of what it thinks I want to hear. And it could be completely connected to how I'm prompting it in the first place. So I will say with that caveat.
Got it. Others? Yeah, that's really interesting. It's most useful when it can kind of provide new perspectives, but not as useful when it's just giving you what you already know or what it thinks you want to hear. Other instances where it might not be useful. Coral says, poor suggestions, does not understand what I need even after clarifying, or non-existence resources as if it made them up. Yep, absolutely. So inaccuracies, or what we call hallucinations. Yeah, those are certainly not useful. So this seems to be a pretty optimistic crowd. We got a lot of use cases that we're finding really useful, and only a couple people sharing things that are not useful. So I want to push us to thinking here about, I want to push us our thinking around this a little bit further, and really kind of poke at what's the real value that AI is adding to my work. Okay. Renee wrote, I struggled with how to use to give feedback on writing over 100 essay drafts, how best to use AI for this task. Yeah, absolutely. Lots of teachers are using AI tools for writing feedback. Happy to talk a little bit more about that at the Q&A in the end. And then somebody just wrote in privacy issues too. So not only is that not useful, it poses a risk too. Great. So I'm going to transition us into this next activity here. And here's what it's going to look like. So obviously there's tons of different ways to use AI, really only capped by our own imagination in terms of how we can use it. But we also want to just really be thoughtful about how and why we're using these tools. So driving question for this activity is, what roles can technology play in shaping learning experiences? Okay, so in a moment, I'm going to put you in some breakout rooms with some small groups. You're going to read a couple example use cases of AI tools. And these are teacher AI tools. So there's going to be a bunch of examples of how a teacher might use an AI tool. Then what you're going to do is you're going to sort them according to the role that the AI is playing in that task. And there's 4 roles that are outlined for you, and I'll put those in the chat in just a moment so you have them. One possible role is that it's just a direct one-to-one substitute for a non-AI method. So think paper pencil to typewriter. It's really no functional gain there. It's just a one-to-one swap. The second role is that it augments what you're already doing. Maybe it speeds it up, maybe it's more efficient. The third is that it modifies how a task could be completed or presented. So an example here might be something like Google Docs, which allows people to collaborate on writing across boundaries. And then the last is that it redefines the task in ways that would have been impossible without the technology. So in a writing example, maybe Google Docs would modify the task, but online platforms that are interactive and allow students to publish really redefine what's possible with technology. So I'm going to paste these 4 roles into the chat. Some of you might be familiar with this framework already, and we'll talk about it after the activity. Okay, so here are the 4 roles in the chat. In a moment, you're going to go into breakout rooms. And what you're going to do is you're going to read these different possible use cases of teachers using AI. They're in the notes field of the slide. Based on your breakout room, you're going to choose a slide. They're all identical. And then with your group, you're just going to discuss the examples and sort them according to what role AI is playing. Is it substituting, augmenting, modifying, or redefining some sort of task? Okay. Just give me a thumbs up if that makes sense. Okay, cool. Great. We're going to take, we'll say 8 minutes to do this part. I'm going to put you in 5 breakout rooms. So just according to your breakout room number, grab the slide that says your room number on it, and we will come back in about 8 minutes. Okay, breakout rooms are about to open. We'll come back at 4:25. Okay, Anya, I'm just gonna bounce from room to room and just listen
Okay,
in.
sure.
Would love to just, what came up in your
Oh,
discussion group as you were categorizing these examples? What came up for you?
May I?
Please.
Without even talking about the specifics, one thing that sort of ticked me off about it, and you know, not in a real serious way, is that these were all examples of basically doing the same thing that we're already doing, but more efficiently. The biggest danger there is to in AI and education is not realizing that the emperor has no clothes.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up. It kind of got ahead of me there even a little bit. I think, you know, a big fear is we're just reproducing old pedagogy. And so for some of these, like, you know, even things like creating a rubric. Well, if your rubric is not, if your rubric's not sound, or if it's not measuring the correct things, then doing it more efficiently isn't actually going to help. If we're just making the same worksheets but faster, it's not necessarily actually, you know, that's not necessarily what we want. What else came up in your groups? I'm curious if there were any examples that maybe there was disagreement about.
Well, our group on slide 12 really thought outside of the box, literally, and it depends the perspective that you take from any of these situations. It could be a substitute, it could be an augmentation, or modifying, or redefining. I mean, you know, it captured a small snapshot of what it was used for, but I think it could certainly fit into any one of those for the most part.
Is there an example you can talk about that you maybe spanned across different ones depending on the context?
I can jump in because we were doing the rubric one. I don't know if that's the example we want to give, but that's where we had a little bit of discussion because it did say the teacher was creating the criteria, but that doesn't have to be the interaction. You can then refine and then it goes into the next, you know, so if you are just having it put it into a rubric format, then that is the one-to-one sub, right? That's like the equivalent of word processing or something, right? It's just organizing it for you. But then depending on how you prompt, you could do it to each of the next levels in refining what you mean by criteria or integrating standards or something else. So that was one we had a little bit of discussion in our out of the box group.
Yeah, and that's great. I think a part of the
We dragged it across.
Yeah, and part of the point of this activity was, there's not like neat little categories like this, and context really does matter, and how the teacher, iterates on these also matters. Were
Our
there
other colleague said how we wanted to get the right answer to it. That always happens with these so funny teachers. We want to put it in the right category.
Exactly. Were there any examples that people felt were strongly in either the modifies or redefines categories? Any of these examples that you were excited about?
In our group, I think the text to speech, definitely everybody agrees right away that it was in redefines. Like we didn't have to talk too much about it, as an example.
And keeping in mind that practical text to speech has always been based on AI, even before ChatGPT.
Okay, final observations or thoughts about the sorting exercise before we transition. Okay, so with that kind of in mind, it looks like some folks kind of looked ahead, and that's totally fine. But just some of you are probably familiar with this framework already. The framework we just used was called SAMR, or SAMR. It stands for substitute, augment, modify, and redefine. It's basically just a way of thinking about what's the actual value that a piece of technology is adding to an activity. So oftentimes we get stuck down here in the substitute and augmentation. We are just swapping out and using a tool just for the sake of the tool, or we're just using it because it's an efficiency gain. And to Mark's point, sometimes an efficiency gain is not really the point, or is not really adding any new value. So I think, one thing I want to push everybody towards is as we're thinking about if, when, and how to use AI tools, how can we start moving up this hierarchy into more of the modification and redefinition zones, and not just simply, using the tool for the sake of using it, or just doing the same thing but more efficiently. So examples here, like at the substitution level, typewriter to replace paper pencil, there's not a lot of functional improvement. Maybe it's a little bit faster. At the augmentation level, using word processing tools add a lot of functionality like spell check, formatting, and you can copy and paste and move stuff around a lot more efficiently than paper pencil or typewriter. At the modification level, a tool like Google Docs, it allows for collaboration across time and place. That's really adding new value to this process of writing. And then at the redefinition level, using web-based platforms, it can allow for lots of different types of interactive writing experiences. It can give students opportunities for publishing and sharing that they never would have had without that technology. So big challenge is just, how can we figure out, how can we live in the upper half of this, and not simply, swapping out one-to-one or just doing the same type of old pedagogy over and over more efficiently. Okay, so now we're going to have a chance to actually play around with some tools. So the driving question for this next part is basically, how do I evaluate AI tools for teachers and students? I'm going to share with you a link to this framework in just a moment. So SAMR is one framework you can use to evaluate, the role of technology in a learning activity. Our team put this framework together when thinking about AI tools specifically. So the acronym we use is COMPASS. It's a lot of different components, but AI is complex, and so there's lots of different considerations. So the C is for compatibility and curriculum alignment. So this is basically, does this tool align with your systems and your standards? O is operability and access. So how easy is this to use? Is it intuitive? Is it appropriate? M is measurement and assessment. So basically, is there evidence of learning impact? P is pedagogical design. Does it support your approach to teaching? Does it offer differentiation options? Adaptability and scaffolding. Does this tool adapt to different student needs? safety, security, and ethics, and then sustainability and support. So lots of different ways that you can think about, whether or not an AI tool is effective. And so I'm going to put this link in the chat. And then in a moment, we're going to go back into small groups, and then we'll have you actually play around with a couple AI tools. Okay, so a couple links going into the chat here. This is the Compass framework. Let me give you one more here. All right, so for the next
sharing settings, Chris.
Which one?
To access.
Which one? The Compass
the
framework?
first one that you shared, or at least I don't have. I can't seem to get access.
1 second. So many of you have probably heard of this tool called Magic School. It is an AI platform for teachers. It markets itself as a way for teachers to save time, be more creative, be more productive. And so we're going to apply sort of our critical lenses and tinker around with this tool. Give me 1 second. I'm going to just open up the sharing. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna power forward, and then I'll update the sharing setting when you're in groups, so that you can just save a minute of time here. So we're gonna take the next couple minutes to play around with Magic School. So I've made this what we call Tinker cards. It's basically just a task-driven set of instructions. So your task is basically to open up Magic School. It's going to look like this. It has all sorts of different teaching tools for you. There is a teacher version and a student version. You're free to choose either of them. Okay, so there's 2 tabs on this Google Doc. You're free to mess around with either the teacher version or the student-facing version. The goal is basically, if you're in the teacher version, you're going to think about a unit a teacher might teach, or think about a unit better yet, think of a unit you might teach. And then you're going to just test out the various tools for planning, differentiating, creating, and assessing. And then choose one of those frameworks, either the Compass framework or the SAMR framework, and just think about, how would you use this framework to evaluate that tool. In your groups, we've got some discussion questions for you to think about. So we want you to think about, when might this be useful? What are some risks and limitations? What are some assumptions about teaching that you think Magic School creators held? What types of tasks are and are not appropriate? And then how might you apply those evaluation frameworks? Okay, there's a different set of similar questions for the student-facing version, but I'm going to put you in different groups here. I think I'm going to have you work in 3s this time. And we'll spend about 12-ish minutes in these groups to play around with the tools. I will update the share settings on that other doc, and then we'll come back at about 4:50. So, okay, rooms are open, and we'll come back in about 12 minutes.
Entrar. Tá na minha classe, mas eu tô no mudo.
Okay. Hopefully everybody was able to successfully get into Magic School and tinker around a little bit. So let's just take a quick poll of the room. Maybe we'll do a fist of 5. Just in general, how are people feeling on Magic School? Fist is like, not a good tool, wouldn't use it. 5 is, I would use this every single day. Where are people at? You can hold up fingers, you can put it in the chat. Got 1s, 3s. If your camera's off, you can either turn camera on or put a number in the chat. I'm seeing a lot of 1s. Okay. and 3s, 2s. Okay, so maybe we'll start with the slightly more optimistic side. Those who are holding up, say, 3 or more fingers, what did you find that could be useful for you?
I like to go back to the personal computer revolution back in the mid 80s. Nobody ever got fired for recommending IBM. Not because it was so groundbreaking, but because it was safe. And Magic School is the IBM of education wrapper applications. They've done all of the privacy compliance rules and things like that, and that's the S in your compass that you have to check off first before any of the other ones. So once you get past that, all the rest of it is reasonably good. It's not best in class in it's in the little capabilities, but it's okay.
Yeah, I want to come back to this sort of like it's okay idea in just a moment, but would love to hear a couple other voices. Anything else people found useful in exploring with Magic School? Well, there were a lot of 1s and 2s. What are areas for critique? What are reasons for critique?
I was trying to create a lesson plan for I teach one class in Spanish, so I was trying to create a lesson plan for beginning students in Spanish, and it took me a while to do that. But once I uploaded my PowerPoint presentation, it did it quickly. So my point is, if I already have a lesson plan, this is just using my PowerPoint immediately. But what about the presentation that it didn't create by itself?
Yeah, really interesting. Others?
I kind of agree with that. So the lesson plans, it was kind of nice. I really like the fact that it spit out some standards also for you, but it says, okay, present this to the students or give them the cards and they have to recognize XYZ. But making this kind of tools, making all the preparation for the classroom, that takes the most time. So the slides, the card, the handouts, that is a lot of time just putting the stuff together, printing it, stuff like that. So if that could give us this I mean, I believe that if there is a lesson plan out there, there must be some material out there that it could collect for us.
Got it. So it sounds like a couple of these comments are around like, it's saving me some time, but not on the things that take the most time.
Yeah.
Giving me some good ideas, but it's not actually doing the most time consuming work.
Right, exactly.
Jenny?
Yeah. So when Chris was actually in our breakout group and when I first got the response from the AI and, I was kind of saying, oh, it's not giving me what I need. And he suggested like going in and modifying the prompt. And so I was able to go back and change the prompt and ask it for some resources. And it was literally like I modified the prompt and it gave me almost exactly the same output, but it added 3 new links that are just like fairly useless. So it's like community gardening websites that don't have educational materials or anything like that. It's just research and information. So again, now I have more work to do because now I have to go research those websites to see if they're containing anything of value to me.
Yeah. And at the same time, it sounds like the lesson planning tool was not super useful for y'all. At the same time, there are tools in there like the text differentiator that actually do save some time or, things like that. So I'm really curious. I'm really curious. So Mark brought up this point that like, it's okay. Like a lot of what comes out of Magic School is like pretty good, maybe better than your typical first year teacher, but not anywhere near your really experienced expert teacher. I'm just kind of curious. I'm genuinely curious. Like, is that a valuable thing to have in a school?
Not unless it's drastically improved.
Can you say more?
Go ahead, Sylvain.
Yeah, I was saying not unless it's drastically improved. It will be, it's a cool tool, and the concept of it is very good, but it's not, the quality is not there yet. So if the quality was there, then yes, maybe it will be useful in a school.
Other thoughts?
Yeah, we're in our second year with it in our district, and I work at a TK5 elementary school, and my impression is my teachers are using it almost not at all. Because it's at that level, they don't really need that sort of support. I mean, give us another year, and I'll be able to give you the answer a little bit better. But maybe in our middle schools, in fact, that'd be interesting to ask them that.
Okay. Okay. Well, I think we've achieved at least one of the goals of today, which was really to think critically about, what is the actual value that some of these tools are providing. Magic School is one tool, and I'm certainly not trying to dump on Magic School today, but I think there are things that we can take from Magic School that are valuable, and then there are also places where we can validly, with good reason, critique the model too. And so I think, just a big takeaway is just trying to give ourselves some different heuristics for how we might evaluate these tools. So just to wrap up here, a couple of key takeaways. When it's used thoughtfully, AI can augment, modify, or redefine some of our tasks in ways that are really enriching for learning. But it can also be used to just reproduce the status quo, just to reproduce things that we're just to do the wrong things more efficiently. And so we want to really be intentional about, if and when and how we're using AI to make sure we're not simply just doing the same thing more efficiently. All of these tools really should be carefully evaluated. I know lots of your schools are probably considering, if they haven't already, purchasing some of these tools. And I think it's really important for teachers to have a say and to be vocal about whether or not these tools are actually providing value to them. Compass and SAMR are two frameworks that you can lean on to evaluate these tools. And then lastly, we really didn't talk a whole lot today about how students will also need to learn how to evaluate AI. This is that AI literacy piece that a lot of schools are starting to think about. What teachers need to know about AI and what students need to know, there's a big overlap, but students will also eventually need to learn how to use these tools responsibly. They're already using them in increasing numbers. And so I see an increasing need as educators to start having these conversations with students and really help them to think critically about their interactions with AI as well. Okay, so I know we kind of breezed through a lot of this, but hopefully it sparked some good discussions. I don't know if there's time for maybe a question or two, but thank you all for engaging with the activities today and for sharing all your insights. Anu and Krista, do we have a time for a question or two?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't mind staying on, if people would like to join. For those of you who need to go, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, Chris, for the wonderful presentation. We're going to continue the AI COP next year, so we will send you more information about how to register for next year. But for now, if anyone has any questions for Chris, otherwise we'll see you next time.
The Magic School AI, and I was just wondering if they've given you any love or support or resources to do this research.
I don't have industry partners. Like I said, I'm not here to dump on them at all, but they are a really popular tool. And so I think it's useful for teachers to dig into it with both a critical eye and also with an eye for where might it be useful. Because all of these tools, they're not all good, they're not all bad. And so I think it's really important to be able to take away both the things that could be useful and also critique the things that still need improvement.
I agree. Thank you for sharing. I have a zillion other questions, but
I'm happy to stick around. So
Yeah, no, I'll just, my name's Valerie, my last name's Paul, Paul, and I'll just ping you on LinkedIn and ask you 20 questions there.
sounds good, Valerie. Thank you for
Thank
coming.
you.
Yeah, I'm happy to take other questions.
I was curious, your last takeaway here is really about students also learning how to evaluate AI. And that's something that I'm working with teachers on, because they'll point out how it's bad at this and it's bad at that. And I always say, don't you think your students should know that? Because they're hesitant to have these conversations with their students because I'm not sure that they know how. So I'm curious to know, have you done work with students that are learning how to evaluate AI tools?
A little bit. So actually, I shared that link in the chat with you earlier.
Yes.
Link in the chat is one study that my team has done around academic integrity. So basically, what we wanted to know, a lot of teachers obviously are most concerned about cheating, understandable. And so what we did was we worked with one group of students, one group of teachers. We gave them 4 examples of how a student might use ChatGPT to help them write. So it was things like write me an outline, fix my paragraph, give me a couple possible first sentences for my essay, and give me a list of counter arguments to help me with my essay. And we asked our students, we asked our teachers to rank those examples in order of how much each student learned and how much each student cheated. And our results showed that there was very little agreement. There was so much disagreement, both between groups and within groups. And so we were able to kind of trace a couple different sources of disagreement. But I think the driving argument of that study is that teachers and students are bringing lots of different beliefs about what it means to learn and to cheat. And they really need to be in dialogue about those things. We can't be in there's the teacher I work with that calls it the abstinence only model, which is let's just pretend the kids aren't using it and doing it. And that I think we're past that. We know kids are using AI tools increasingly. And so I think being able to have these types of conversations with students is really important. So academic integrity is one really important piece of that student conversation. Critical thinking and being able to decide what to believe is another really important piece of that. Ethics and bias and understanding the imperfections of these tools is another big piece of that. So yeah, those are, I think you're spot on. It's like, don't you want your students to know that? Of course you do. And how we do that and whose responsibility it is. Those are all really big questions that I think school leaders also need to be tackling.
I totally agree. I think it's so interesting. We can't agree on what's cheating, because I came from the old school of, well, just create assignments they can't cheat on, just do projects, do this. But I know but the framework for assessing students is, a standardized test. So they can. So it's hard to come from that framework and go, oh, but that is, and help me with this, write this sentence better. An if I was doing it and trying to learn it in Spanish, I know I would use it in Spanish, because I'm always trying to improve my Spanish. And I get why students use it, but why are we calling that cheating? But there's always an argument, because our framework hasn't even changed on how we teach and how we assess. So
yeah. I mean, there's 2 things that, I'm not thinking of. Like, one is any of those use cases could help students learn or could shortcut their learning. It really depends on what is the student doing with those suggestions? Are they copying, pasting, or are they thinking critically about it and then using their own thinking to produce something new? So it's less about it. I think it's very much about, if students are using AI, which we know they are, how can we, 1, make their thinking more visible, and 2, still teach them that they need to do the productive struggle. And both of those things have to happen.
Chris, do you have any suggestions? Because that is one thing I was using the Magic AI to do an exemplar summary. And I keep playing with this because I was teaching 7th grade language arts students how to write a summary of an informational text. And part of me goes, do they really need to be able to write a summary of an informational text? I mean, it is something we want them to know how to do, but AI does this well, right? It knows, but I want them to understand the structure of the text, to hack the structure of the text, because the cognitive piece I most care about is that they can determine what is most important from a given text. I don't want the AI to do that. So, and yet seventh grade brains, this is the rub. And I tell, if you put it in and the AI might write better than you right now, but that is part of me being able to have an idea of how you're organizing your thoughts and your own thinking. It's not, but they're very literal and they want to go, so I'm just curious if there's some summer reading or support groups. I'm just kidding. But ways to kind of to keep coaching in this way.
Well, you asked the right question, which is why do I want them to summarize in the first place?
Yeah, I keep checking things as I'm going because listen, I'm not above shifting things around if it's not a valuable.
Yeah, but then you articulated why, and that was great. And I think
Yeah.
one way you could use AI to teach them summary is you could ask AI to generate 10 different summaries of one piece of text, and you
To
want
show.
you want it to be a varying degree of quality. And then you could ask kids to read, hey, read this summary, read these 10 summaries and sort them in order of like which you think was the best and the
Yeah.
worst, from best to worst summary, and discuss why. And the discussing why is the part that where the learning is
Yeah.
happening, because then they're coming up with the criteria for what makes a good summary. They're
Yeah.
they're the ones thinking, what are the elements that have to go in a good summary? What are
Right.
left out of a good summary? And so that's where the learning is taking place, is in evaluating the AI outputs.
Yeah, we did a lot with the text, but not so much with actual summary. So that's an interesting idea to try because I'm looking at the first sentence and the last sentence, or the first paragraph and the last paragraph, and the title is the formula. Like that's going to give you the main idea. That's the synthesizing I'm trying to get them to do because that's what the author's intent is. Not necessarily the sentence that is the most alarming or scary or interesting, because that might not be the main idea. So I'm trying to mimic ways to do that. But I like that idea of generating more summaries so they can actually see those. I did more with the text, but not as much with actual exemplars and non-exemplars and all the in between. So that might be helpful. Thanks. I'll keep at it.
That's really interesting to do it that way. That was I thought that was a really good example. It reminds me of reading like clickbait. Does the headline match what's in there? I mean, no one wants to click on clickbait, but tangent kind of articles that give you a little bit.
Yeah.
But does it represent and then you talk about the hook and you talk about how could you improve it? So yeah, that's a great example. This is what I love about AI is that discussion.
Yeah.
What's better? Because I find teachers like to be perfect. And this gives them an example of how they think is to be perfect, but there's the depth of getting to, like you just said, what's the purpose of writing a summary statement? Like, what's the purpose?
Yeah, and that is something I've told students that, I've read quite a few outsiders essays, and I don't want to read a bunch of AI outsiders essays. Like, this is time to retire. Like, what am I here for? That's not interesting to me. That sounds like a very torturous session at Starbucks. I want to know what they think. In this modern time, looking at this novel, the kids still seem to love. That's interesting to me. There's nothing there if they start doing that. So I'm really blunt about that. Even if it looks perfect or what they think, I don't think they realize how valuable their own ideas are. And that's part of the grief I have that I'm noticing with their shift to AI. It's like, oh no, this is all about your humanity, not perfection. So yeah.
Actually, that was kind of my question, that comment that you just made, Renee, about they don't know how valuable their ideas are. I'm seeing the opposite. And I guess I wanted to talk like just in terms of like, Chris, what you're confronting with in terms of security, because we're very, we want to protect student data. We're under obligations in the field of education. But what I'm seeing is that students are reluctant to use AI tools because they're like, I don't want AI stealing my ideas and my intellectual
Oh,
property,
that's interesting.
right? And so I don't know if you're
so
confronting any of that, or, you know, and like when they say things are secure, like with Magic School, or like, you know, Google, how secure is it really?
That's
So
I think that's a Silicon Valley.
I was just gonna say, yeah, these
well, I was
There's
gonna
some San Diego. I don't hear it as much as
I was gonna ask about your school site. I mean, I think, yeah. Thanks, Krista. Yeah, I was gonna ask about your school site because that's like a very specific group of students.
I'm teaching at a middle college on a community college campus, so.
All right, thanks, Jenny. Any other questions?
thanks for
to
the extra
have it.
time. It's nice to see all of you.
You guys are
Really
awesome.
valuable sessions too.
Oh my God, you make me want to
Thank you.
start a study group on this. This is
Yeah.
awesome. Especially when teachers think like this. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Take
Thank
care.
you, Chris. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Connie.